From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2048, these are the Ham Nation headlines for Wednesday, February 1st, 2017. The Amateur Radio Parity Act is our top story this week. Neil Rapp leads off our team coverage.
Only days after its introduction on Capitol Hill, the bill, also known as H.R. 555, was passed by the House of Representatives on unanimous consent under a suspension of House rules. Under the measure, FCC rules would prohibit deed restrictions by groups, such as homeowners associations, that bar amateur radio communications. ARRL Hudson Division Director Mike Lysenko into YBB said in an email message to members that he was encouraged by the swiftness of the lawmakers' action. The measure moves next to the Senate, where its predecessor, H.R. 1301, died last year after overwhelmingly winning approval in the House. Lysenko, who had been involved in the legislative push, urged hams to raise their voices once again for its passage by sending supportive emails to Congress. In an email to members, ARRL President Rick Roderick, K5UR, pressed hams to strengthen the grassroots effort nationally. He wrote in an email message sent to members, quote, "Keep going. Now is the time to charge forward with that same momentum to the Senate. We can do it," end quote. Meanwhile, Missouri lawmakers have been holding hearings on a state version of the Parity Act, as we learned from Amateur Radio Newsline's Christian Kudnick, K0STH.
House Bill 136, also known as the Missouri Amateur Radio Parity Act, was before a committee hearing on Tuesday, January 24th, 2017. It was the third hearing scheduled at high noon. Roughly 20 Missouri hams came to the Capitol prepared to speak on behalf of the bill. Due to time constraints, only 4 licensed amateurs were allowed to testify, one of which was Ward Silver N0AX. Representative Mike Moon from District 157 voiced his basic support of the amateur radio service, but raised his concern about violating private land use agreements. Additional questions about the size of antennas were asked from several district representatives. Larry Scantlin, KE0KZ, is one of the leading advocates of Bill 136. He said, quote, "I believe we could have done a better job at answering the questions about antenna size. I believe that overall the committee received the information they needed to make a favorable decision to pass it out to their committee," unquote. The HOAs were also represented. Jim Durham testified in opposition. However, in the end, he stated that he believed that, quote, "something positive could be worked out to satisfy everyone," unquote. Next, Bill 136 waits for the committee to bring it up for a vote. In the meantime, organizers encourage amateur radio operators in Missouri to contact their representatives and ask for their support. This information, other ham radio related resources, and an interactive blog can be found at marpa.us. For Amateur Radio Newsline in Missouri, I'm Christian Kudnick, K0STH.
Back in Washington, D.C., the Federal Amateur Radio Parity Act has already drawn praise from the nation's new top telecommunications regulator, Ajit Pai, shortly after being named new chairman of the FCC by President Donald Trump. Pai, the commission's senior Republican, had only praise for the action taken by the House of Representatives in passing H.R. 555, calling it an important piece of legislation. Originally named to the commission under President Barack Obama, Pai is an advocate of limited government involvement and free market forces.
For the rest of this week's Amateur Radio News, please listen to the full Amateur Radio Newsline report online, on a repeater near you, or on shortwave radio station WTWW at 9930 and 5085 kilohertz. And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at www.arnewsline.org. With Neil Rapp, WB9 VPG, Christian Kudnick, K0STH, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW, 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation.